your back end stuff while you're doing that.
It's a mess. But here
Sounds like a
it
job
goes.
for an automation.
Oh man, wouldn't that be nice? But in the olden days, when we first got computers, and God only knows who made them or where they were from, but um, they were IBMs, I believe, or Hewlett Packards or something. Anyway, they did have a way that you could actually make a program of a sequence of keys, and then every time you came to that particular part of your document or whatever,
Hmm.
you could just hit that, and it would just do it all for you. And
Macros.
macros, yes. Oh my Lord, I used to
Harkening back to the
because I
early Excel days, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I use macros a lot. They're kind of cool. But
yeah.
I think how's this for a segue? The way that Holy Spirit wants to train our mind is to create a forgiveness macro, so that
Yes.
any time that something triggers us and we feel a lack of peace, we immediately turn to Holy Spirit for a reinterpretation of ego's misinterpretation. How's that work?
Exactly. And just like control F, forgiveness. Boom, 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 boom. And you're in
and and
and it's there.
and Control Z or Command Z for undoing what never was, right?
There you go. That's I'm glad somebody else remembers that. But I was doing a lot of work on computers, but not anything for myself. I was just either uh, a lot of technical writing when I first started, and doing manuals and
Mhm.
instructions and uh, all sorts of stuff. So it was really good to have a way to just kind of automate even the tiniest little bit of that work, because it is quite tedious
Sure.
giving people instructions and such and explaining how things work. It's quite a difference. So now I'm in free mode where I'm just doing whatever the Holy Spirit tells me to do. And that is all I like. It's fun. And anyway, so welcome, Bruce Rawls. Thank you, Glorian. Everyone, we're here reading from Absence from Felicity, the story of Helen Schuckman and her scribing of A Course in Miracles. We are also on YouTube. If you came to gather for A Course in Miracles, it's our YouTube channel. And you can actually watch us live there too as well. Uh, and of course, we're in Zoom. And if anybody has got the code and wants to come in the Zoom room, absolutely welcome to come on in there too. So we have a party going on. All right. All right. So, so yeah, okay. So we are starting chapter 7. And Bruce, would you like to read?
Sure, sure. In the print version of Absence from Felicity, the story of Helen Schuckman and her scribing of A Course in Miracles by Kenneth Wapnick, PhD, we are at the top of page 185, beginning the chapter 7 of that saga. It took us 184 pages just to get to the beginning of A Course in Miracles, 1965, which is the title of this next chapter. We've been um, sashaying our way towards for the last few months, since last summer, I think. But yeah, we're making pretty good progress on this one. I think we might finish this in less than 2 years, maybe even maybe who knows. But anyway, not that there's any kind of pace that's needed. So Ken's narration begins with one day toward the autumn of 1965. Helen mentioned to Bill that she had the feeling she was, quote, about to do something very unexpected, unquote. Something obviously far more unexpected than what had already transpired. And she says, quote, I had no idea what it was, but I knew it was going to happen soon, unquote. Ever since the visit to Virginia Beach earlier in September, which is where the Association for Research and Enlightenment, I believe, still has its headquarters, Helen had, on Bill's urging, been keeping, quote, a sort of diary, unquote, of her various experiences, writing down her own thoughts as well as messages from Jesus, or her internal voice, as she sometimes preferred to think of him. So here's the preliminary that set the stage for not only was Helen a tremendous scholar and enthusiast of the work of Plato and Freud and Shakespeare and the style of writing of the Bible, but not necessarily the content. But she also had been taking down her mental notes of things that were going on in her mind. So it's like we got all a pretty good collection of ingredients there to make way for the course, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, actually, because she's saying, she's saying something even more unusual is going to happen. Like, how do people have these kind of mystical experiences and maintain their position in the world where that is absolutely the opposite of what a psychologist would be talking about or experiencing, or maybe not, because there are a lot of psychologists that are open to this kind of stuff and maybe were at the time as well.
Uh,
So I think it's pretty interesting. Something more, even more unexpected than what has ever happened before is, and that so she's expecting it. Really, she's being prepared really for this revelation that's going to happen.
she
And I think
she
it's quiet.
Oh, good. I was just thinking she's like someone watching a Monty Python program and knows that every so often they're going to say, and now for something completely different,
Yeah. And and,
which
and
which will be
expecting
lost to anyone who's not a Monty Python
and now for something completely different. Right. My gosh.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
So
Uh,
there's some footnotes on the bottom of the print version here, footnote number 42 in this case, the print version. Ken writes, the notebook in which these thoughts and messages were contained, unfortunately, is gone, if indeed there ever were a separate notebook. All that remains from this quote pre-course unquote period of writing are an entry that was written on 3 separate sheets of paper and several pages written on the 3 days immediately prior to the beginning of the scribing. These pages are contained in the same notebook as the opening pages of the course. And I'm going to put my personal aside inserted here, and that is I know that Tam Morgan and the folks at Foundation for Inner Peace um, have been shepherding and archiving a tremendous amount of material that not only came from Helen and Bill, because they inherited all that, just a tremendous amount of stuff that, but then when Ken passed, um, basically a great deal of that also, the historical material, went into those storage units, along with the things that Judy Sketch-Whitson had contributed and everyone at FIP. So there, so there's a lot of stuff there that might be worthy of encouraging Tam Morgan and all the wonderful folks at FIP. Um, that are I know they probably need help with that, so maybe there's an opportunity for some people who want to volunteer to help Tam and the folks there go through all that stuff. And there's probably some stuff of great interest, and even if that doesn't happen, which I hope it does, there's a tremendous amount already on the FIP website. If you go to acim.org and look under the site map, you can see a lot of resources of historical material, including some lengthy essays on the scribing of the course and various historical details, which are pretty interesting actually. Even if you aren't a course student, it makes for an interesting read. But if you are a course student, it's particularly interesting. And just kind of like as you and I are experiencing with reading this book, um, at first pass, it seems like, wow, what an interesting historical um, account of the life of this interesting woman and named Helen Schuckman. But more to the point, it's like, well, it's really, we're all in the same boat. We all have the same true shared interest, which is waking up from the dream. And so with that perspective, that historical material can be given a whole new light. And and just, well, of course, everything that we experience in this world really is historical material, right? Thinking about that just for a moment. So anyway,
Yeah, no, this may sound really radical. I'm going to say something that is radical to me to even think it, but because I'm thinking it, I'm going to say it.
sure.
Uh, Maybe she should open that vault to somebody like Robert Perry, who is a meticulous scholar who went through everything that he had, which was brought about because of the court case, all the what do they call it? Not findings, but uh, all the everything that they got. He meticulously went through that, sorted through it, interpreted in his way, and published a whole different version of A Course in Miracles with all these notes and footnotes and backstories and all this kind of stuff. I'm sure you've probably seen that. You might even have one. I don't know.
I don't happen to have a copy of that, but I know of the large volume. That's what, 900 pages that has
Yeah.
all
And
those
and
details. Yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
when somebody has that kind of dedication to the course, which he absolutely does, and is willing to do the work to look and eager for it, because
Uh,
that's what when they were first doing this in the well, I've known many of those people, Robert Perry and uh, um Doug Thompson and Doug Mackey and all those guys that were doing the text and all that business. Um, I used to accuse him of, if you had the chance, you'd have gone, searching through Helen's underwear drawer for notes. You'd have been looking everywhere, and they have published a volume of Helen's notes that they got in that discovery from the court case.
mhm.
So there's, so many people that are just so eager for more. Now, okay, to me, yeah, this is all very interesting, and I'm really excited about hearing it and having it and knowing about it. However,
I think you might be
it
about
really,
to share the caveat I was about to share, thinking about what you're sharing. But go ahead,
yeah.
please.
The point of the course is to forgive the world, forgive
Exactly.
the dream, forgive the illusion,
Yeah.
not to enhance it by adding
Yeah.
more and more stuff to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I take back all that, and here's a macro. All right.
Well, I think it's like everything else. It's like any interest that we already have or any ability, the Holy Spirit will happily use to bring us back to the place in our mind where we can forgive the dream of separation, including everything that we call history, including the ego's use of the present and the future, which is always some kind of fear, and heal the entire dream of separation of space and time, and help us see that it never happened and therefore achieve what the course refers to as the atonement.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
and watch
But
all
that
those.
is an interesting idea. And I would just add to that on that level is, there's already in existence, even pre-AI, plenty of archival and storage retrieval tools that might be interesting to employ in that regard. But again, it's kind of academic and peripheral to the elephant in the room purpose of my sole responsibility is to accept the atonement for myself, and then each of us as course students can say that with great authority.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
as Glorian is just posting in the chat, and this is my belief as well. I got to where I am with the blue book that saves lives. It's about experience beyond words. We cannot think our way out of this. Exactly, Glorian. That's absolutely true. We can't think our way out of it. And for me, yes, the FIP is the only book I had, for years and years. I got other copies of the others, and I'm like, what's the point? What is the point of all of this other than to keep the ego busy with comparison and discussion? So, boom, that's done.
Yeah, yeah. And again, like we've been saying, it's like the whole purpose is really to notice what's going on in our mind and learn to become more and more patient, gentle, and forgiving. whatever we use on the level of form that assists that with giving Holy Spirit's purpose rather than the ego's is wonderful. It's not about the specifics we're using. It's the fact that we're using the specifics to choose the Holy Spirit's thought system, and
Exactly.
and therefore undo the belief in separation.
Exactly. And it's just, this morning, our lesson for today, we're on lesson 27. It's January 27th.
Uh-huh.
Above all else, I want to see.
Yep.
And I was in a group this morning and we are talking about that. And, I was saying, well, what is it that I want to see? Above all else, what is it that I want to see? And, do I want to see the world where Christ mind is in everyone and everyone is just doing their part in the dream so that I can awaken from the dream? Is that what I want to see? So I can be grateful to everybody that I see and thankful for every every politician and every corporation and every is this what I want to see, is that they're all innocent and that everything they're doing is for my best interest, and
Those
and
innocent inner entities.
yes. And there was a lot of pushback, not a lot, but there was some pushback in the group. It's like, well, wait a minute, no, no, no. There's some things that you just can't, let go of, and there's some things that you really do have to do something about. And I said, well, then above all else, you don't want to see.
Yeah, and I think kind of along the lines of what our beloved Ken Wapnick would say, extending the workbook commentary to everything really is the way to do the workbook perfectly is to do it imperfectly and forgive yourself, and use our resistance as an ego identified minds to see how ineffective the ego is at bringing us peace, and see how on those wonderfully initially rare moments when we trust Holy Spirit and question ego's misinterpretation of everything, and do experience these little miracle moments of peace, we begin to accumulate enough objective data about which thought system works and which one doesn't. And sooner or later, above all else, we will want to see. But right now, we're all a mixed bag here. We're all, you know, uh, recovering egoholics, and that's
Yeah,
okay because otherwise we wouldn't need the course, right?
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right. I mean, it's only here because we need it, and we're only
yeah,
talking about it because, or seeing a world really that
mm,
appears to be doing something that,
yeah, yeah.
when we stop seeing that, then, we won't have any problems. But right now we can't see. We don't see. We are blind, deaf and dumb and blind. Uh,
Yep. So all we need to do is take a big can of spray paint and a ladder and get to our ceiling in the room where we hang out the most and write above all else, I want to see. Maybe not literally, but mentally.
exactly. Above all else, I want to see. I need to repaint my ceiling. Okay. All right. You want to continue reading or what?
Sure, I'll at least finish Ken's initial commentary on page
Okay.
185. Okay, so Ken continues. Bill now suggested that Helen write down anything that occurred to her in connection with the quote unexpected something unquote, feeling that perhaps this might help Helen identify what it was. Reflecting back on this writing, Helen later wrote that, quote, nothing much came of my attempts at first, unquote, but her entries seem to belie this. The scribing of the course actually began on the evening of October 21st, but the entries for October 18th, 19th, 20th, and the morning of the 21st are interesting indeed, particularly as they witness to Helen's experience of Jesus and trust in him prior to A Course in Miracles. Some of these notes are similar to the tone and content of her earlier letters to Bill, being Helen's writing to herself, with some of the notes coming in a stream of consciousness. I reproduce excerpts here. Do you want to pick up from there?
Sure, I need to get on the right screen.
Okay.
Um, it's all good. Okay. So the first entry is actually undated and was found loose in Helen's notebook. However, from internal evidence, it almost definitely can be placed before the notes of October 19th and 20th, which were dated. The most compelling reason for predating this to the 18th is the reference to the biblical quote, inasmuch as you do this to the least of these, end quote, which must antedate the reference to the confusion in wording that is found in the note on October 19th. On the same page in which these notes begin is a list of things for Helen to do, which is similar to the list heading the notes of the 19th, hence the rationale for assigning these entries to the 18th. One final comment. As in the early dictation of the course itself, the speaker in these notes shifts back and forth between Jesus and Helen. This first entry begins with the voice of Jesus discussing God's non involvement with the problems of his children. And this is from this quote. The reason why God does not interfere with man's free will is that is the ultimate in respect, and God does respect his creations, even though his creations don't. If he interfered with their will, he would be enslaving them, and God does not enslave. Wow.
The cosmic prime
This
directive, huh?
is, yep, the prime directive. And boy, whenever people ask me, well, why does God let these things happen? This is exactly it. Wow.
What
This is
things?
before the course. Yeah. Oh, God's not going to
Things?
let
There's
us
things
do
happening?
whatever we want.
That film at 11, things are happening.
Oh. I was thinking the other day, but still playing on this screen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the run-on sentence movie of ego's tiny mad idea that we keep hitting the go back 10 million years and or whatever, 10 billion trillion, it doesn't matter how many years
Yeah,
to the beginning of the tiny dream of a mad idea. And just like, okay, well, I don't have to really worry about that, but I just need to look at how much I'm still investing in it right now. Yeah.
exactly. Because if we do the command backspace, it'll erase all of it for us.
Mhm.
So we got that macro. I love
I
that.
like that.
Okay.
That's good. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So Ken continues, the meaning underlying this explanation is expressed later in the text, with the non-interfering agent there being Jesus. It may be found in the fourth paragraph in Fear and Conflict in chapter 2, and in the opening paragraph of the succeeding uh, section, Cause and Effect. Incidentally, explanations such as the one given here were expressed in the form Helen could understand at the time, as I shall discuss in part 3. It is clear from the later dictation of A Course in Miracles that God's non-involvement truly comes because he does not even know about the world, being outside of his mind, which alone is reality. The entire world of separation must be illusory and therefore cannot exist. How then could God involve himself in what is not there? And so, yeah, that's the other point. God, basically the way I look at it is like, God's in the house and saying, you kids go out and play and do whatever you want. Just, knowing that there's nothing in this world that can hurt us. Nothing can hurt he knows that. Nothing can hurt his children. So he doesn't even know what circumstances we're under because in God's mind, we're all perfect and perfectly safe. In our mind, we have stepped outside of heaven and now we're in when like in the movie Beetlejuice when the couple that were dead and that were in the house and they opened the door and they stepped out of the house and they were in this crazy you know world with creatures and whatever because they stepped outside of of their reality, and that's what we think we did. And so um, that not even, God's in the house doesn't even know, we think we're out here wandering in this horrible place. Um, so yeah. So how could God involve himself in what's not there? So Ken continues. The notes then continue with Helen's commenting on a dream she had forgotten, but she is told by Jesus that the meaning of the dream is quote, you mustn't neglect your responsibility here. And that's in italics, the here. End quote. Jesus' insistence to Helen on the importance of her remaining faithful to her worldly responsibilities, and which would include both personal and professional ones, is consistent with his emphasis in the course on paying attention to the forms of the classrooms we have chosen, within which we learn our lessons of forgiveness. Despite the course's teachings on the illusory nature of the world and the body, we are nonetheless continually urged not to skip over the steps of our learning the Holy Spirit's lessons here, where we believe we are.
Mhm.
Jesus then continues with a punning message for Bill. And this is another thing I think is just so cool, is that Jesus puns for Bill because Bill is a punster. Okay, so this is it. The message. Tell Bill if he can learn to substitute teach strong for headstrong, he will be all right. So tell Bill if he can learn to substitute teach strong for headstrong, he will be all right. Then Helen. I claim this is a very bad pun and also associate it with an order which I did not follow to look up teach as a word last night. All I remember is I thought of another word with an EA, maybe head or learn. I did look it up this AM, and among other things, it means impart or communicate knowledge.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Mhm. Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And of course,
You know
I'm
that
always,
that 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 stuff, the last part of that paragraph about really, being, act your part with honor is one of Ken's wonderful workshops, which I'm getting into now. And also just, the gentle admonition from the course to not skip over steps and avoid level confusion. I think it just occurred to me that, being mindful on the level of form really is just basically saying be consistent with how you use your mind, regardless of what level the things seem to be at. Is if I'm mindful and use Holy Spirit to look at everything, both in terms of what's real and what's unreal, then that mindfulness will carry me through. The mindfulness being listening to Holy Spirit's refutation of anything implying guilt is real. And then that kind of ties into the whole idea of, which to me is one of the two things in reading Gary Renard's first book back in 2007 that was plunged me headlong back into reading the course, and definitely paying attention to not only Gary Renard's material but Ken Wapnick's material, was two ideas that somehow I kind of overlooked. And one was that God has nothing to do with the dream of space-time individuality and duality altogether, and that forgiveness is really the whole point of the course. That's the practice, the practical approach that we can apply to everything and learn to generalize and find our way home, from a dream to where we never left. Yeah,
yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you got to take it back down to the basics.
yeah, yeah.
What really is being said here. And
Mm-hmm.
and I love this the idea of um that what we think we are, this head, this being, this brain, this body, whatever, um, it really is incapable of learning anything.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so it's only being in the place where we're um, fluid, open, and capable of being taught. It's like, the old adage of, if the cup is full, you can't keep pouring anything into it. And we have to empty the cup and recognize that we really don't know. And that's why we do really, above all else, want to see, because I don't see anything now. And what I
Hmm.
see is a bad joke.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The good puns can lead us beyond the bad joke of ego, right?
That's right.
Seen properly. At
Seen
least that's
properly.
how I justify my pun proclivity. So,
Yeah, I love your puns because it absolutely does uh make us see things from a different direction. And that's they're unpredictable puns are. So, but when they are predictable, they're very funny still. Okay, so let's see. Uh so Ken continues. Some information is obviously lacking here, but as will be explained in the next chapter, Jesus' punning was a means of expressing his love for Bill, who was a marvelous punster. Helen's rebelliousness, of course, was typical of her interactions with Jesus, and the equation of teaching with communicating knowledge would become clearer to her once the scribing of the course began. Teachers of God, through the Holy Spirit, become instruments for communicating or reflecting the knowledge of heaven using the symbols of the world. So this, I'm just going to just throw this out here. Um, who is the author of the course?
well,
We
what
always say
maybe the proper question is, what is the author of the course?
right. We always say Jesus, but it's through the mind of Helen,
Hmm.
who loves Bill and who will make up a bad pun and blame it on Jesus. Or I'm believing she just didn't know that this voice that she was hearing was the Holy Spirit through her,
Hmm.
Jesus through her, not Jesus' separate personality. It this is a question that I always wonder about, because in my mind, of course, my thinking, um, is that everything is the Holy Spirit through us, and that
Hmm.
Jesus as a person was not personally, maybe he was personally talking to Helen, but Helen was hearing what she was hearing and writing down what she was hearing because it was in the, like he says right here, um, through becoming instruments for communicating or reflecting the knowledge of heaven using the symbols of the world, the symbols of what she could understand. That's why it's all about psychology. That's why it's all about Shakespeare. That's why it's all about uh, uh, Freud. It's all coming from the knowledge base of Helen in the world
Hmm.
and Jesus explaining, or this Holy Spirit explaining it to her in words that she could understand and that she would be able to communicate. If it would have been you or me, the course would look entirely different.
Hmm. And it does.
Yeah, yeah,
and 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 it's our choice of teacher, and there's only two, the course reminds us, is whether or not we align with the message behind the words of the course, which we're all uh, challenged, I guess would be one way to put it, but we're all encouraged and urged to do, not with any kind of pressure or coercion whatsoever, but really from that part of our mind that knows that's the only way we're going to have a peaceful experience in the world and really transcend what we think of as the world. As you're sharing that, I was thinking, well, who on the level of form, Helen and Bill, were, and then of course Ken and Judy were responsible for bringing the course to the millions on this planet, and that's just a physical fact, if there's such a thing. But if we really pay attention to what the course is saying, read between the lines, the Holy Spirit can only be an experience in our mind that we allow in by denying the ego's interpretation of everything. And so what really wrote the course has to be the Holy Spirit in my mind, your mind, and everyone else's mind who's listening to this, that is not a different mind. It's really that part of us that knows that we are all one and have never separated. And we just need to keep practicing that until that becomes our experience, not just a cool theory or a pretty idea. Right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And recognizing that it's it's all it has to be uh interpreted through our own thinking because we believe so firmly that we're separate entities, separate
Yeah.
beings.
Yeah.
And until we can recognize our one-mindedness, we're going to need different versions of the course. We're going to need different uh, pictures on our walls. We're going to need all these different differences
Or
because
ceilings,
we
depending
think
on, right?
or ceilings, yeah, yeah. We're going to believe believe that that's what gives meaning to our world. But eventually, we begin to see that none of these things, nothing I see here really means anything. And the only thing that actually has any meaning is the Holy Spirit that's in everything and everyone. And, that's the whole idea of just looking at, what I'm rejecting or what I'm accepting in the world and what I'm deciding is good and what I'm deciding is all the judgments that I have that we're asked to let go of because that's the real meaning of forgiveness. I don't judge anything I see. I don't. It's all neutral.
Hmm.
In a forgiven world, everything is neutral, and that doesn't mean it's ultra beautiful or it's ultra anything. It's not ultra anything. It's just all the same. And in a good way, not not in a blank and cold way, which is what the ego tells you. Oh man, that's just nothing. Not having that is nothing. But in a good way, in a way that we feel the love of God, which is really what we're trying to find anyway in all of this.
Hmm. So speaking of the word
So
ultra, it reminded me of some videos from a year, oh gosh, a decade or so ago. Um, the How to Be Ultra Spiritual with JP Sears. I just Googled it, and if you haven't seen those, they're pretty funny. They're
yeah,
basically
yeah.
lampooning our level of confusion, um, and addiction to form and uh, behavior and all that kind of stuff. So, but they're kind of a hoot.
Yeah, some of those are pretty funny. Yeah, and
Then,
and, and you know what? We loved that guy. Everybody thought, gee, he was so funny. And then COVID came around and he got caught up in all these conspiracy theories and started doing conspiracy theory things and people freaked out. And I think he's kind of out of popularity
oh
now.
God, I haven't kept up with it. I
Yeah,
didn't know.
well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but that's what I'm saying. The same mind that we agree with and laugh about is the same mind that we suddenly become terrified by because it starts talking about something that scares us.
We're
Because
all working with a split mind here until we're not, right? Till we finally see the patient but persistent, gentle remedy that the Holy Spirit keeps handing out to us in our mind over and over and over again, and see, well, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I could try doing this more and more consistently, and find the peace that I've always wanted. Oh yeah, what a thought,
there,
what a
you
concept.
just said something that reminded me of what I was going to say to you before and completely blanked my mind out when we were talking.
Teamwork.
It came back, yeah, because you said consistency, and you were talking about um, all the different things that were going on in Helen's and Bill's mind and whatever. The consistency, the honesty, is it's the second um characteristic of a teacher of God. The first one being trust,
Hmm.
which is you have to develop for everything, to anything to work. And the next one on the list is honesty, which is consistency, which says, I do what I think and I think what I do.
Yeah.
What is in my mind is how I express. How I express is what's in my mind. And consistently expressing with the Holy Spirit brings about a vision of a gentle world. And consistently expressing with the ego brings about a vision of a terrifying world. So this is that consistency that comes about by the practice that we do with the lessons and with our studies and our discussions and all these things that remind us to keep going back, keep going back, keep going back. That consistency is what brings about the peace.
Yep. And it's consistently on using the course's metaphor of vertical and horizontal, it's consistently questioning ego's horizontal um, barrage and cornucopia of distractions. Not that we don't do things in the world that are normal and appropriate and just be normal, but when we vertically, if you will, look up, we're learning to see with Christ's vision. And I was thinking a few moments ago with Bill's punsterism in mind that like a baby duck is called a duckling, and little versions of things are called, you tack on ling. Well, maybe we're learning to see, so we're sealings. Then we have to go beyond our sealings status, right? So,
Man, do you have a ceiling issue here today?
no, I just like wordplay, like Bill.
Uh, for some reason, as you're saying this, I was reminded of a meme that I just saw.
Yeah.
And what was it? I don't know, maybe Ernie and Bert or something.
Oh,
And
those are fun. Yeah.
one of them is looking up, and it says at above the cartoon, it says, after the second hit of acid, Ernie began to read the words above him.
Yeah, well, we're all on an acid trip that we call ego, and we're all hallucinating, prodigiously, right? And that's what the
Yeah.
course keeps asking us to recognize. The Son of God, you haven't sinned, but you've been much mistaken. We're hallucinating off the charts here, but we call that life.
Yeah, actually, we call it vision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh my gosh. All
As
right.
long as long as we're riveted and obsessed with specifics, which all of us most of the time I would venture to guess do, we're still hallucinating, and that's okay because we just need to look at that and forgive ourselves for each of those specific hallucinations, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And forgive the world for even mentioning it.
Yeah, because the world is in my mind, and that's where that I need that feedback of everyone and everything that seems to be out in the world, and recognize that it's in my mind. That first step of forgiveness is I'm never upset for the reason I think. I need to take all the wonderful saviors that seem to be out there that are showing me what's in my mind, whether it's something that I like or don't like, special love or a special hate that I've made a big deal out of, and just say, oh, well, I could see peace instead of this guilt that I've just discovered is in my mind. But with Holy Spirit's help, is again, I see that it didn't happen there either. But that's the first two steps of forgiveness, and then the third, after the reveal and the release, the replace, the third R, it just is automatic, right? It's just like, okay, I just need to actively, proactively keep searching my mind for anything that's not peaceful, and drag it out of that dark closet in my mind into Holy Spirit's close encounter floodlight beam of forgiveness, and just say, oh, there's nothing there. Watch it vaporize.
That's right. That's right. There's nothing there. And it becomes more and more evident as we go along. Let's see. Let's move on. Do you want to read?
Sure. Sure.
Okay.
We're at, let's see, some information is obviously lacking here, but as will be explained in the next chapter, Jesus' punning was oh, we already read that one, didn't we? Okay.
We read that one, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
So
let me go
we're
to the next one.
on
Jesus, in a manner with which Helen would become very familiar later, here continues by correcting a famous biblical statement. Correction. Inasmuch as you do this to the least of these, and then parentheses, empty parentheses, I'm not sure what was for that, you do it unto me, has been mistranslated. The parentheses were put in by Helen, who became confused about what belonged next. Quote, my brothers, unquote, or quote, my children, unquote, or even nothing. And as mentioned above, this was discussed the following day. Jesus now supplies his new meaning for the quotation. Um, and let's see, there's a footnote, but I think it's, well, I'll read the footnote later. Um, what Jesus supplies now. Let me start that again. Jesus now supplies his new meaning for the quotation. What is really said was, quote, in so much as you give more to those who have less, you give it unto me, unquote. Helen, I thought this was kind of cute, and he laughed and said he was glad I liked it. He borrowed it from one of my own fundraising talks, and then brackets for the Shield Institute of Retarded Children, unbracket. To and then quote, to him who hath shall be given, unquote. This seems unfair unless you look at it closer. It does not mean to him that hath uh, least should you give still less. But if you think of it as an order to give more to those who have less, then it becomes a way of helping all men to become free and equal, which, and then in parentheses, which may yet be how things were created. Aha, on print, close of prints. So anyway, the next paragraph is a message for Bill, the theme of which will play an important part in a later segment of the scribing. And then this is Helen's writing. And tell Bill that his fear of teaching comes from his fear of controlling minds. He is mixed up about brain and soul, so he is afraid to interfere. Well, that could apply to all of us, huh? Helen, that's for both of us. Jesus, the fallacy is if brain is mind, which it is not, don't dare touch it. Error obvious. Wow, good stuff there, huh? I mean, that's could have been straight from the course, but just in a more conversational tone, huh?
Oh yeah, and it goes along with a lot of current conversations that we're having about what is the mind,
Mm-hmm.
and if the mind is not the brain, what is it, and where is it, and how do I access it?
What would you do with a brain if you had one? Or paraphrased from that quote from Wizard of Oz. What would you do with a mind if you had one? That's what I always try to remember.
Exactly. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
we do. So interesting. And also, I just wanted to say that last part where he's talking about giving more, those who have more to give to those who have less, is a miracle principle. It's one of the miracle principles. So,
Yep.
all right, I'll let you continue reading.
Okay. Um, let's see. Actually, do you want to continue reading? Mary?
Sure.
And then I need to leave in about 4 minutes because I'm
Oh, okay.
going to help facilitate a School for A Course in Miracles class this morning.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you, Bruce. I really appreciate having you here with me.
Oh, likewise, likewise, always.
Our years together, it's just pretty amazing to me.
Well, we're certainly not special, but we have a lot of fun, don't we? I mean,
We sure do. Uh, I love it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's see. Uh, I guess, yeah, this is Ken continuing. So Jesus had said, if the fallacy is if brain is mind, which it is not, don't dare touch it. Error obvious. The point made here is a subtle one, but nonetheless, this is Ken, but nonetheless important. Jesus is explaining to Bill that his fear of teaching comes from a made-up belief that he can really attack other minds. In line with Jesus's later explanations to Helen, this would come on one level from an earlier, past life misuse of his mind. Nonetheless, no mind can attack another unless that other mind has already chosen to be attacked. Once
mhm.
this error has been made real and the mind equated with the brain, which appears to be capable of being taught by other brains, the obvious protection against making the mistake again is to refrain from teaching altogether. Bill's fear of public speaking, to which we shall also return later, results from the same erroneous thinking that inevitably leads to maladaptive defenses, protecting something which is not really there.
And isn't
So
that a perfect setup for Ken's quote that he wanted to be known by, that the ego is a maladaptive solution to a non-existent problem?
yeah,
Yeah,
and something I say all the time. That's
yeah,
pretty interesting.
yeah.
Uh,
That's a great phrase, and I think Ken picked a really good one. It's a little bit wordy and technical, but when you really think about what it means, it's like, yeah, it's maladaptive, meaning it does flat out just doesn't work. Um, and it purports to be a solution that says everyone's ego, but if we just look at the evidence to the contrary, we'll see it doesn't work because there's nothing to fix. Um, and how could dream repair really work if
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
dream? I mean, our best attempts to repair dreams are doomed to failure, right? But that's okay because they're dreams. Yeah,
yeah. It's something that never existed and never will exist. It's kind of hard to improve it
yeah, yeah.
or make it worse.
Hmm.
That's pretty funny.
And that the idea that we can really attack other minds. I was thinking, if there was a t-shirt factory in the ego mind, it would churn out shirts by the millions and billions that say, on the back of the shirt, kick me, basically. Because, we set it up. We want people to attack us so that we have a justification for retaliation, right?
Well, yeah, so that we maintain our separate reality. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the purpose of it. It's not because we really want to attack or be attacked. It's so that we maintain our separate reality and therefore prove that we were right and God was wrong the whole time.
I exist, but it's not my fault. And on that note, I will bid you a fond adieu until next week. And thank you again, Lynn and everyone, for participating. And lots of love to everyone. Have a great week.
Thank you, Bruce. I love you, brother. We'll see
Likewise.
you next week.
Bye for now.
Goodbye. So actually, I'm not going to continue reading. We got about 5 minutes, but we'll just mark the page and uh, oh, I'm on the wrong computer. I'm like, why is this not working? That's what happens when you have two computers running. So I'm going to bookmark that page and just welcome everybody. I've been with Bruce Rawls and we've been reading Absence from Felicity, the story of Helen Schuckman and her scribing of Course in Miracles by Dr. Kenneth Wapnick, PhD. So, hey, y'all. And I'm also